I'm going to tell you a story. When I was in undergrad, I didn't really write for percussion very often. In fact, I didn't write for percussion at all until my senior year. And then when I wrote for percussion, I struggled and I thought, percussion seems to be the most emotionless of the instrument families. It doesn't seem to portray emotion very well. And some people disagreed with me. And as I've worked professionally in the industry now for several years, and that was probably 5 years ago that I had those thoughts, I've come to realize that I actually still think I'm correct. I think percussion has the least emotion in it. And I think it has the least substance. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's because I think percussion is additive rather than substantial. And what I mean by that is percussion is seasoning as opposed to being the core food item. So there's two different types of percussion, and it's hard to lump them into the same group because the pitched percussion and the keyboard instruments are very much so different than the unpitched percussion. And if you want to divide it further, small hand percussion is also very different than large unpitched percussion. However, I do believe that percussion enhances what it is doing, similar to salt or a seasoning, rather than being the core substance. That being said, what I did not realize in undergrad is how much you can actually do with percussion, because I was writing with notation and sheet music, which doesn't accurately represent the sounds of percussion and all of the unique, very interesting things that you can do. In fact, I think if you were to look at sheet music, even with extended techniques, it is hard to truly grasp and understand what the percussion is doing and how it's doing it, because percussion is anything and everything. It's anything that isn't the main instrument families, and even the main instrument families themselves can also be percussion. If you're clicking keys or if you're tapping on the body of your double bass, it's also percussion. So with that in mind, today we're going to write a piece of music. I have no brief, I have no premise. The only thing I'm going to do is write a piece of music using only percussion. We're going to see what we can do. Goal is, theoretically, I don't know, a minute of music or something. Let's see how fast we can do it. So I'm thinking something a little bit slower, probably about 100 is where I'm going to start. And where I'm going to start is probably with some keyboard instruments, because I want some harmonic language. Now, this is not always the case. In fact, very often I find myself writing music for one project in particular where I start with percussion and I start with unpitched percussion and I create grooves and rhythms before I write any harmonic language. And that actually, a lot of times that's easier. I think you can find your pocket easier that way. But I think this time I'm going to start with keyboard instruments, and then we'll move from there. So I've got part of my template pulled up. I'm actually going to pull up a lot of different things here, I think, though, because, again, percussion can do so much that we don't account for. Sorry, mate. I just got to adjust my seat here real quick because this is a little bit different. All right. So let's see. We've got Critalis. It's actually beautiful. Tubular bells. That's one of the tricky things about percussion with sample libraries, is you never know where it's actually going to be on the keyboard despite the octave being wherever. Glockenspiel. Nice. We've got another glockenspiel, xylophone, vibraphone, another vibraphone, marimba, celesta, which actually I might go with that. And then timpani, of course, which Timpani is, again, an interesting one because it sits in this middle ground of pitched and unpitched. It is pitched, but kind of functions like an unpitched big drum. And then we've got a million different unpitched things here of all different varieties of traditional classical stuff and then of not as traditional stuff. So, you know what? Let's start with celesta. I'm going to hit the mat, start playing something. Key. I could just play in C minor because that's where my fingers like to go. But how low does my celesta go? Down to a C. Maybe I do stick with C. Yeah, let's just do it. Let's just sit somewhere comfortable. Do I love that? Not exactly. I'm going to go ahead and quantize that to eighth notes. I didn't love the latter half of this. I don't like how I went to the B flat in the second half. I think I want to emphasize the G more there, and then something like that instead. Something like that, mate. I think that'll be all right. All right, I think that's a good starting point. So my chords there basically are C minor, B flat major, G minor. Cool. Let's see if we can do something interesting. We're using only percussion. So if I want some tonal hits or something with it, let's see if I can maybe get away with some chimes, tubular bells. So I think something like that was okay. I actually think let's go ahead and quantize that, mate. Actually, I'm gonna redo that. Yeah, I think I like that. Let's go ahead and keep that. I think that's going to be nice. All right. Then let's just go ahead and repeat that idea. All right. And now let's see if we can get something more interesting moving throughout. So maybe halfway through, one of the interesting things about percussion is that people associate it with rhythm. And so obviously, I'm going to be thinking rhythm here. Is there some kind of counter rhythm or something that I can start to throw in right from the beginning? Maybe is the answer. Actually don't like that vibraphone that much. That one's nicer. Let's try something. Yep, little like ostinato thing right there, something like that. Not a weird rhythm just yet. We're still getting pretty straightforward here. It's really simple, and it's still sitting on that C thing. All right, now I'm going to go ahead because I'm already feeling I don't know where this is supposed to go, so I'm going to go ahead and start writing some larger percussion stuff. So. percussion. Let's start with some taikos. So obviously my playing there was not very good, right? But for the most part, I'm going to color this slightly lighter so we can see it. For the most part, I'm in, except for when I'm doing the triplets. So let's get this whole section here. I'm just going to go ahead and quantize that to the 16th notes. I was so far off on that, move that over here, move that over here. Didn't love that. You know what? I actually don't like most of this. I'm just going to put it in again with some bigger hits. So yep, something like that. It's working. It's getting into a weird spot here though, because we're getting big, right? You know what? I quantized that when I shouldn't have, because this is supposed to be triplets. So it's supposed to be eighth note triplets. No, actually, that actually is correct. I think it was 16th notes. That's correct. Yeah, that's something. We're starting some kind of piece of music. Is it the most original thing on the planet? Absolutely not, but yeah. What if I actually started? I kind of like this idea of starting before that. So, ooh, Jacob, play in time, shall we? All right, let me do it one more time so I can play better. Yeah, that's kind of fun, isn't it? I think that's actually quite nice. Yeah, let's just go ahead and do that, and then that's going to be technically the downbeat is going to be there. Dang, I'm talking about on number 1. You'll see my personality really come out here, swapping between British accents and something else. Yeah. Let's get some marimba in here, and let's make it some big marimba. That feels rolled off. Why does that sound so rolled off? That's not the biggest marimba in the world, is it? Let's do maybe... Well, let's see what other pitched percussion we have instead. Or maybe even a different marimba. So there's one that in particular that I'm thinking, mallet flux here. You guys can't see that, my bad. Not glockenspiel. Let's see if I can pull up a marimba and let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, that's actually kind of cool. Yep, that's pretty good. I think I want close mic. Yeah, all right. Something like that. I think that works all right, and it's not the worst thing in the world. By golly, sometimes that is hard to see when it's on those colors. Da-da-da-da. That should be correct. That one's slightly off. Should be there. No. What did I do? What did I do wrong here? Oh, nothing. Yeah, so we're getting somewhere. Here, we're gonna go into another thing with percussion. I am completely unashamed about how I write with percussion, because percussion to me is the one thing that doesn't have to be purely orchestral, so you can do whatever you want. So how about a cool little sequencer thing? This is called sequis, and it has a lot of different variations and stuff in it. With different instruments, and I think what we want is we want some like hand drum kind of thing, which I could write that myself, but sometimes it's more interesting to have something else with like an already set loop and then write on top and around it. Some people would say that's cheating, and I'm like, no, it's not cheating. But one of the best strategies you can do is, if you're not very good at rhythm, is find something in a loop like this and then take the rhythm that they do and just like write that rhythm yourself with different libraries and stuff, instead of using their exact loops, because sometimes loops are a little bit weird. But all of this is completely adjustable anyway. So let's just go through action shakers in 4/4. Honestly, that would be really good for what we have here, but I like that. I'm actually going to make this more interesting. So let's spice up our percussion a little bit. I'm going to add a delay on there. Yep. And I'm going to just do it on a... You know what? I kind of liked it on that dotted eighth note. So let's do it like halfway through here. Yeah, something like that. It's kind of cool. I'm going to make sure that these cut off exactly where I want them to, which I believe is right there, so that everything is equal for the delay. But then I want this one going here, and I think we've set ourselves up for a nice like drop moment or something, which would be super cool. So if I'm going to have some kind of drop moment thing, typically what I would do is I would literally just copy and then like, oh, you wait for the drop and then it all comes back in, which is pretty standard, kind of boring. But we're going to do it right now just for the sake of making sure we know what we want. Let's see if we like it, and then if we don't, we'll write something totally different, right? Yeah, no, I don't like it immediately. So, let's write something else. Let's go into like, let's actually dig into this. So let's do something like 7/8 maybe. So time signature, because again, percussion, everyone associates percussion with like weird meters and stuff. So let's just full blown go into it. So if I'm doing 7/8, a lot of times the way that you think of it is 3 + 2 + 2. Or am I doing my math right? Yep. 3 + 2 + 2 or 2 + 2 + 3. That's your divisions for 7/8. You could technically do 2 + 3 + 2, but I was always taught that that doesn't work very well. And when I do find when I write that way, it makes it sound like that 3 that's in the middle is actually the downbeat. It sort of tricks the brain into something being incorrect. And so not a huge fan of doing that kind of stuff. So now that we're here, I'm going to completely change the groove. And so let's do a 3 + 2 + 2. So decca da decca 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 da decca decca. So at this tempo, dap doop doop dap doop dap doop dap goop boop back goop dap doop. Right. So let's do something interesting. Yeah, something like that. I'm gonna just like go ahead and emphasize that right from the get-go. Yep, something like that. And that's another damage ensemble. That's Armageddon ensemble right here. And then obviously I messed up a little bit. Yeah, kind of like that. And then actually, let's get even weirder with it. Let's see if maybe we can leave that bar empty and then come back in again later. So let's get weird with rhythms and have fun here. So what I want is, I do want a really big, huge hit right there. I think I want this one. I think that's too big almost. Taiko maybe? Try that maybe. Did I mess that up? Did I write in 4/4 on accident and no one told me? I definitely wrote in 4/4 on accident. I did 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 and no one told me. Wow, look at my brain. So crazy. Let's rewrite all that. What am I doing wrong here? Yeah, that's right. Did I not change it in the right spot? No, I did. I keep hitting that. I keep hitting my right. I'm flubbing this. I keep hitting that my right hand 3 times for some reason. And now I'm putting myself in 6/8. Wake up, Jacob. That's what it's supposed to be. I'm flubbing it out here, y'all. All right. Yep. And then, all right, let's start moving a lot faster. Yep. Move this over here. Move this right here. A little emphasize on that. Done. Okay. Then we're gonna go to. See if we can do something like that over it. Let me write it in 4 real quick. Let me write it in 4, but with like a double time click. Actually, I can do it without. Yep. So something like that. I'm gonna put this 4/4 pattern over the 7/8 here. Yep, something like that. Yeah. And so it's actually, and then I just cut it off, and so now everything's like lining up very nicely. Cool. Sick. So let's see if we can make things magical again. So what I'm going to do here, though, is I'm going to go back to, because I really want to showcase all the interesting stuff that percussion can do. So one of the things that's pretty common for pitched percussion in particular is bowing the percussion. So instead of just hitting it, you can bow it, right? So as far as I'm concerned, if we're bowing it, that's allowed. Absolutely, that's percussion. So mallet flux, let's get single. Let's do like a vibraphone. Let's do it bowed. Actually, don't love that. I'm actually going to do a reverse bow into this section here. So a reverse is basically just taking the audio and then reversing it. Theoretically, we could practically do that if we're getting sound designy, but here I can also just do it myself. Yeah, and actually I'll show you guys what that's going to look like from a sound design perspective. I'm just going to render that out to audio. You should see. Yeah. So where's the actual hit of that? Somewhere around there. I'm going to keep that, and I'm going to keep that lower. And then actually, I'm going to do I'll show you guys some actual sound design that I would pretty much always do for a transition like this, which is instead of doing a cymbal swell, let's do a cymbal reverse. So I'm just going to pick like a drum kit here. So I'm going to go to Studio Drummer. Doesn't really matter. You can just pick anything. I'm going to let it load up real quick. Let's take that. So I took that and I basically just put it in anywhere. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to render it to audio. I'm going to color these slightly differently so we can see them easier. So I've rendered it to audio, and then I'm going to reverse it. So I just reversed it. I have a hotkey set up for that, but you guys can do it however you want. So then we have to find where the hit of that is. All right, somewhere around there. So then I'm going to reduce the audio back over here, do this, see if these two line up, do a little fade in on that. I know I did that very quickly. So I basically took the hit of a cymbal, reversed the hit, moved to the peak wherever the actual hit happens, basically, put that peak right here, chopped it off, theoretically, if I'm lining up perfectly, cut off all the stuff I don't need at the beginning, and then I actually... So it's already sort of swelling, but I did a harsher swell, a more dramatic one, and I could do like a linear versus exponential, or like a softer one even. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I typically do it like this, and let's see if these two line up properly. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I don't love how this one is starting strong. I'd prefer it swell into that too. So I'm also gonna have that swell into that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then I'm just gonna shorten this tail, bring it down here, bring that down. I really don't like how that completely seemingly comes out of nowhere right there. I wish the note was more. There it is. Much, much better. So I'm just going to call this a bowed reverse. Then I'm going to call this a cymbal reverse. Okay. And then these, I don't care about these instances of these instruments because I was using them for audio, so I'm just going to go ahead and remove them and use them for whatever I want now. So that's there. And now I would like to do some bowed work, but maybe not a vibraphone. Maybe I can do it on the celesta or something to create a musical idea up top. If it wants to. Yeah. So for this we only have soft longs and we have reverses. That's actually kind of cool. Let's see if we can do something with the reverses. Loved that already. I think that's great. That's doing a super, super cool effect on that. So we're doing a little bit of sound designy stuff here, but that's okay because we're doing digital orchestration for a reason, and percussion is all over the place with this kind of stuff. So